All right, so as Rebecca mentioned, my name's Jasmine. I'm a UX designer at Thrive, and I'm going to let the panelists introduce themselves really quickly.
Hi, I'm Anik Huber. I'm a student at Georgia Tech in human-computer interaction, and I currently study and do projects in virtual reality.
Hello, I'm Sarthak. I'm also a student at Georgia Tech. I'm studying HCI. I'm in the second year of my master's. I'm really interested in creating, designing interactive environments, and that's how I got into AR and VR.
Hi, my name is Josh Fisher. I'm a doctoral student at Georgia Tech in the digital media program. I primarily do research in interactive documentary design across a range of virtuality technologies from augmented to mixed to virtual reality.
Hi everyone, my name is Amit Garg, also a HEI student, second year. I have a background in neuroscience and got into VR through Georgia Tech. I'm really interested in design of virtual environments, but also the research and evaluation of them.
Hi everyone, my name is Tika Lin. I'm a second year digital media student in Georgia Tech, and I'm particularly interested in designing for mixed reality, entertaining and learning experience. So right now my master project is about augmented reality tour for Georgia Aquarium, which is exciting.
All right, so with that, we'll get started. I want to just give a brief kind of overview. We all talk about AR and VR and hear these words, but I wanted to point out that there is a distinction between the two. So when we're talking about VR, we're typically talking about highly immersive environments where the goal is to transport someone to a new place, essentially. So for the designer, that has a lot of implications about sense of presence and identity and what you're designing for. Now, with augmented reality, we're talking about things where the experience is rooted in the person's current physical environment, but we're kind of overlaying digital elements on top of that. So I just wanted to make that distinction before we get started. We're going to cover about 3 broad topics today, and then we'll leave a few minutes for questions at the end. So we're going to talk about the domains and tasks that AR and VR are suited for. We'll cover how we can take a lot of design and research methodologies that are being used in the UX space currently for more 2D screen-based designs, and then we're going to talk about diversity and how we incorporate that and whose responsibility it is to think about that when we're designing these environments. So with that, so the first topic we're going to cover, which types of tasks and domains are AR and VR currently well suited for, and how do we think that that might change in the next 3 to 5 years?
So this is not exactly a very simple question. AR and VR are very different things, and even in the middle we have mixed reality, which is essentially moving from augmented into virtual reality through very specific interactions. The domains that we commonly see with augmented reality right now range from things that are really simple, like using Yelp Monocle to look down the street and see the ratings of restaurants that pop up, to educational materials, to using sort of diagrams overlaid on top of mechanical engines for educational purposes. These are instructional. The question is, in 3 to 5 years, how can we use these same tools to tell stories? That's where virtual reality is certainly excelling at the moment, in my opinion, as a relation to AR.
I genuinely think that this is a question that a lot of companies are currently really working at answering. Research amongst companies is happening all over the field. So it's hard for us to really answer those questions. But currently, a lot of the experience that exists are mostly video games and 3D movies that people can look around in. But there's also a lot of research being done in how to train people in professional jobs, for example, surgeons, without actually having to deal with real bodies, or flight simulators. Also, I know that there's research being done in digital stores, so places where people can actually look at items and interact as if they were real.
So I think VR, AR, both of these have been traditionally been used for defense and simulation, and that is still one of the main applications of the field. But right now, I think entertainment plays a big part because that's how it gains popularity, and if that fails, everything else fails. But having said that, I would like to mention like a few exciting things that I find I think AR and VR are very well suited for. For AR, I think smart home control is a very interesting field because, so I was working in one of these projects where you can kind of point a projector towards any appliance in your home, and you can see its status, what's the temperature, you can control stuff overlaid on top of the device. So that way you don't have to look at your remote control and at the device at the same time. So it kind of focuses your attention on one place. For VR, I think the collaborative space is a very interesting thing. I think we have all experienced all space VR where you're put into a common environment with people from all over the world and you're talking with them. But I think if you think of Skype, doing video conference with your loved ones in a VR setting is, I think something like that will be a really exciting thing to explore. And I feel in the next 3 to 5 years, that will be something that we should look out for. Imagine if you're in Italy in some restaurant sitting with your loved one in a VR setting. That's amazing.
So I think just the way that augmented reality is designed for is a little more considered on the go, right? You think about things like Google Glass. It's meant to be worn while someone's walking down the street and to provide contextual information to the person. And so that, I think in 3 to 5 years, companies who are looking into AR right now will really see that as a sort of channel of engagement with customers and with users. Whereas I think VR is a little more, is a little less contextual to that space, more of immersive storytelling experiences that a person, at least now, can experience in their own home. And you're not going to really see anybody walking down the street with a head-mounted display on. And I think to mirror what someone said about the collaborative space, Arthur, so like Facebook's acquisition of Oculus, right? You're seeing that Oculus is getting this hugely social space influence in terms of the applications that they're designing for Oculus and for VR. So you're seeing that sort of social collaborative push from Facebook and Oculus.
So I've seen the right now VR and AR have been implemented in industry like travel, entertainment, health, military, and all that. And I think there are 2 categories. One is for immersive experience like 360 movie or like immersive game, and the other is just for specific tasks like you do medical training or like military training. But I think in 3 to 5 years, as I imagine, it will be more into our day-to-day life. Like it will help us with daily tasks. For example, for those tasks that include like multiple options to preview before you can make decision. For example, it will be really interesting if you go to the restaurant and you can see all that menu being shown, like how it will be cooked after it cooked, and you decide which to choose. And also for transportation, right now we have to look up the phone. If our train is delayed, we have to reschedule it on our phone. But what if you go to the station and you just see it's showing up in the augmented reality, like your HoloLens, and you don't really need to look it up. It will just tell you what's the best route to go to. And the other one I feel very interesting is like right now there is some application for that. It's a retail shopping. For example, you want to see what furniture look like in your home. You don't need to measure it. You can just view it in virtual reality and see that. And also, the other one is like a library. For example, right now you have to look up the library system, searching for information you want. What if you can just look into it in augmented reality and you can quickly search like right now I have this keyword and I want to connect the information to that and just search for that information in mixed reality way.
Thank you for asking that question. It actually leads to the point I was going to add on to what Tika was saying is, yes, there is this definite issue right now with the maturity of virtuality mediums and what they can accomplish. All of us up here are very involved in doing the research to design the grammars for interactions and what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. Part of that and part of what's happening is within the next year in nightly builds of Mozilla and in Chrome, you're having WebVR. WebVR is much more easy to implement than the stuff that you see in Oculus and the Vive that requires Unity and a lot of programming. So by making it easier, by making the environment for virtuality easier, by making the entire onboarding process easier, we'll have a lot more practitioners entering the space. Will they create experiences that are perfectly suited? Perhaps not always, but it's part of this incredibly sort of exploratory phase that we're in. People who are interested in WebVR, I would encourage you to check out A-Frame, which allows you to do programming of these WebVR experiences in 4 to 5 lines of code. The benefit of this, to just go off of the IKEA example in furniture, is a lot of these experiences are built for apps, which is actually kind of a huge pain. You've got to go to the App Store, download the app, open the app, learn how to use the app, and then experience the content. With WebVR and having it just be in the browser on a web page, you move from, I really like that chair, to pressing a button to seeing that chair through your browser like Safari. So this is the direction we're going, and hopefully we start to answer some of those questions.
Another thing I would like to add is the technological, a lot of problem arises because of the expectation doesn't meet what you have. And I think that's the reason why something as brilliant as the Google Glass failed to gain ground, because what they show is not what you get. They show a lot of things and you're wowed to look at those videos, but when you wear them, it doesn't perform. But you have to understand that it's a part of an evolutionary process. So if you would now wear the Microsoft HoloLens, which is kind of similar to what the Google Glass wanted to achieve, but it's much, much more better. Even then, the HoloLens has a lot of downfalls, where you have to keep scanning your environment, and you cannot basically walk around with it. Although you can still walk around in your own room because it's already been scanned. So what I would say is it's a part of a process, and we need to kind of experiment and also hold our horses to give them a chance and give the technology a chance to evolve.
Together, I wondered if you had to give an example of one domain or professional field where you think that the technology is at a place currently or will be in the next year or so where it definitely will have value. We've heard a lot of examples from a lot of different places, but where is there unquestionably going to be a big impact?
I think right now travel is definitely one field that VR is already implemented and well accepted. I know there's one company called UVisit. It starts from doing a tour, a campus tour, virtual tour for all famous colleges in the United States. Right now they turn their virtual tour online into a 360 and also web VR. And I think that's one thing that's really good, because people always have a desire to explore different places, and we don't really have time and money for that. So that would be a really cool thing to implement, and it's right now accepted by most people.
I've got a kind of a unique use case to talk about. The Augmented Environments Lab at Georgia Tech partnered with GTRI to essentially go into a poultry farm and use augmented reality. Not exactly the most common use case that would come to mind. But there are things with chickens that you just can't see when you look at them that you have to pick up with sensors. I'm not a chicken expert, I don't know, but apparently there are. On these poultry lines, these chickens go by apparently at 180 chickens per minute. And sometimes these chickens are sick and they have to be pulled off the line. And that's really hard to do for somebody in that instance. So GTRI got with the Augmented Environments Lab to fit out all the chicken coops with sensors that then were able to tag the chickens. And then when chickens were going down the line, the worker, through their headset, were able to see chickens that were marked as being sick or unhealthy and were pulled off the line so that because they weren't safe for human consumption. So that's a very specific use case, right? But that's an instance that we know works.
Yeah.
Okay,
One thing that's certain is gaming, right? Yeah. And it's going to stay there. It's amazing. And I think the next thing that's going to happen is multiplayer gaming, which still doesn't exist much. And having 2 players in the same environment in VR is something that's going to come about in the next 1 to 3 years, I guess.
With that, we'll move on.